The stars had always been kind to Park Do-yeon. For 20 years, he had moved through them in his cargo ship, the Eternal Dawn, carrying goods from one world to another. He was a simple man who wanted simple things. A warm meal, a safe crew, letters from his daughter when she was away at school. But the stars stopped being kind on the day the Galactic Council decided that humanity should no longer exist. Do-yeon was 53 years old. His hair had started turning gray at the temples, and his hands were rough from years of fixing engines and loading cargo. He stood on the bridge of his ship, watching the endless black of space, when his daughter Yuna called out to him. Her voice was strange, tight, afraid. "Father," she said, "something is wrong." Yuna was 24. She had her mother's eyes and her father's stubborn heart. She worked as the ship's navigator, and she knew the space lanes better than anyone. When she pointed at the sensor screen, Do-yeon felt his blood turn cold. 17 warships were holding position near Earth. 17 warships meant only one thing. They were too late to do anything. Too far away. Too small. The Eternal Dawn was just a cargo ship with a crew of 12 people. They could only watch. On the Council homeworld of Velith Prime, the vote had already happened. 47 species sat on the Galactic Council. They made the laws that governed the galaxy. They decided who could trade, who could travel, and who could live. Humanity had been part of this council for 93 years. They had followed the rules. They had built trade routes. They had made friends and allies. But it was not enough. The Velith were an old species. They had ruled the council for thousands of years. They did not like change, and they did not like competition. Humans changed too fast. Humans learned too quickly. Humans asked too many questions and built too many things. The Velith saw this and felt fear. High Arbiter Thiessen Vor was the leader of the Velith. He was tall and thin, with gray skin and eyes like black stones. He had spent decades building support for one idea. Humanity was too dangerous to live. On this day, he finally had enough votes. Resolution 7 Omega passed with 43 votes in favor and only 4 against. The resolution said that all humans must die. Every colony, every ship, every man, woman, and child. The word they used was sterilization. They made murder sound clean. 6 hours after the vote, the bombardment began. Do-yeon watched the live feeds on his ship's main screen. He saw the cities he had grown up in turn to fire. He saw the oceans boil away. He saw mountains crumble into dust. 8 billion people lived on Earth. 8 billion people died in a matter of hours. His wife was buried on Earth. She had died 3 years ago from a sickness that no doctor could cure. Do-yeon had promised to visit her grave when his current run was finished. Now there was no grave. There was no Earth. There was only ash and glass where his home used to be. Yuna stood beside him. Tears ran down her face, but she did not make a sound. The rest of the crew gathered behind them. Some were crying, some were praying. Some just stared at the screen with empty eyes. Do-yeon did not cry. He felt something cold settle into his chest. It was not sadness. It was not anger. It was something deeper, something patient. He turned off the screen when the feeds went to static. He looked at his crew, his family. "We survive," he said. His voice was quiet but steady. "And then we remember." The council did not stop with Earth. They sent ships to every human colony. They attacked refugee vessels trying to flee. They offered rewards to anyone who reported human survivors. They made it illegal for other species to help humans in any way. But the galaxy was very large. Humanity was very stubborn. Do-yeon did not run toward safety. There was no safety. Instead, he ran toward the places no one else would go. Dead zones where radiation made sensors useless. Asteroid fields that were too dangerous to navigate. The dark spaces between stars where ships could hide for years. His crew of 12 became a crew of 73. They found survivors on damaged ships. They rescued families from destroyed stations. They took anyone who needed help. The Eternal Dawn was never meant to carry so many people. They slept in shifts. They rationed food. They fixed the engines with spare parts held together by hope and desperation. Yuna became more than a navigator. She became her father's right hand. She learned to read sensor data for signs of council patrols. She learned to plot escape routes through impossible terrain. She learned to keep her fear locked away where it could not hurt anyone. 3 months after Earth fell, Doyan received a message on a hidden frequency. It was from a woman named Kang Jie. She had been a military commander before the genocide. Now she was hiding in a research station near the edge of the solar system. She had 40 survivors with her. She wanted to meet. Doyan was careful. He sent scouts first. He checked for traps. But Jie was real, and her offer was genuine. She wanted to build something. Not just a hiding place, but a network. A way for survivors to find each other. A foundation for whatever came next. They met on a frozen moon with no name. Doyan brought Yuna. Jia brought her second-in-command, a young man named Choi Taiyang, who had been a scientist before the war. They sat in a cold room and talked for hours. "The council thinks we are extinct," Jia said. She was 51 years old, with short gray hair and eyes that had seen too much death. "They think they won. We need to let them keep thinking that." Doyan nodded. "We hide. We hide," Jia agreed. "We grow. We learn. And when the time is right, we make them regret what they did." Taiyang was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke. "I was on a neutral station when the killing started. I watched council soldiers murder children in the hallways. I will never forget their faces." He looked at Doyan. "I will help you. Whatever it takes." Doyan looked at his daughter. Yuna's eyes were hard now. The softness of youth was gone. "Whatever it takes," she repeated, and so the survivors began to gather. They called themselves the Scattered. They had no home, no fleet, no power, but they had something the council did not understand. They had patience. They had memory, and they had rage that would burn for generations. 2 years had passed since Earth burned. The Galactic Council had declared humanity extinct. They held celebrations on Velith Prime. They gave medals to the admirals who had led the bombardment. They closed the files and moved on to other business. They believed the threat was over. They were wrong. In the dark spaces of the galaxy, humanity was growing. Not fast, not loud, but steady, like roots spreading beneath the ground. The Scattered had become a network of hidden stations and secret ships. They lived in places the Council had forgotten. They built homes inside dead moons and hollowed asteroids. They survived on recycled air and stolen supplies and pure stubborn will. Park Do-yan had changed. The cargo captain was gone. In his place stood a leader who carried the weight of his people on his shoulders. He had lost 30 pounds. His hair was fully gray now, but his eyes held a fire that had not been there before. He made decisions that sent people to die, and he carried each death with him like a stone in his pocket. His daughter Yuna had changed too. She was 26 now, and she commanded her own ship. The Eternal Dawn had been split into 2 vessels when they captured a council patrol craft. Yuna took the new ship and named it the Long Memory. She led raids on supply convoys. She rescued survivors from council death squads. She became known among the Scattered as someone who would never leave a human behind. Kang Jie had built them an army. It was not a large army. Humanity did not have the numbers for large armies anymore. But it was a sharp army. Every soldier was trained to move without sound, to kill without hesitation, to disappear before the enemy knew they were there. Jie was harsh and demanding, but her soldiers worshipped her. She had kept them alive when everything said they should be dead. Choi Taiyang worked in hidden laboratories. He was a quiet man who spoke more to his machines than to people, but his work was deadly. He studied the bodies of their enemies. He learned their weaknesses. He found ways to hurt them that they could not see coming. The council had feared human creativity. Taiyang was showing them why. A new face had joined the Scattered's inner circle. Her name was Yoon Murray, and she was a ghost. Before the genocide, she had worked in human intelligence. She gathered secrets for a living. Now she used those skills to move among alien populations like smoke through air. She learned their languages. She copied their manners. She wore their clothes and spoke their words until she became invisible. Mireille was 38 years old. She had a soft face and gentle eyes that made people trust her. That trust was a weapon. In 2 years, she had infiltrated 3 council species. She had seduced officials and befriended servants. She had stolen data from secure systems and photographed documents in locked rooms. Her information was worth more than 100 ships. The Scattered also found allies in unexpected places. The Kashani were a reptile-like species who had been conquered by the Council 800 years ago. They remembered their own genocide. They saw what was happening to humanity and felt old anger wake up in their hearts. They offered shelter and supplies in exchange for nothing but friendship. The Thrum were beings made of living crystal. They had been denied voting rights on the Council for 1,000 years. They were treated as lesser creatures, despite their intelligence and culture. When human agents approached them, they listened. When the agents asked for help, they agreed. The moth people of Salaith 7 were fragile and beautiful and easy to ignore. The Council considered them harmless. This was a mistake. They had excellent memories and a talent for moving through places unnoticed. They became the Scattered's messengers, carrying information across the galaxy in ways the Council could not track. One by one, the Scattered built connections. They found the cracks in the Council's power. They found the species who were angry, the officials who were corrupt, the soldiers who were tired of taking orders. They did not ask these people to fight. Not yet. They only asked them to wait. To watch, to be ready. Doyan held meetings on a hidden station built inside a dead comet. The comet drifted through empty space on a path that took centuries to complete. No one would think to look for them there. In the cold metal rooms of this station, the Scattered planned their revenge. "We cannot beat them in a straight fight," GA said during one such meeting. "They have 6,000 warships. We have maybe 200, and most of those are converted cargo haulers." "Then we do not fight straight," Mireille replied. She pulled up a holographic display showing Council trade routes. "We fight crooked. We make them bleed slowly. We make them turn against each other." Ayang nodded. He had been working on something new. A virus that targeted Valith biology specifically. It would spread through their food supply and kill them over months. By the time they realized what was happening, millions would be infected. "I can give us a weapon," he said. "Something they will never see coming." Doyan listened to all of them. Then he spoke. "The Council is not one enemy. It is 47 enemies wearing one face. They stay together because they are afraid of each other. We need to make that fear grow. We need to give them reasons to suspect each other. We need to break their trust." Una had been quiet until now. She leaned forward. "We need to hurt them without them knowing we exist. If they think we are dead, they will blame their problems on each other. They will tear themselves apart while we watch." There was silence in the room. Then GA smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. "I like this plan." So the Scattered began their secret war. They did not announce themselves. They did not make demands. They simply began to break things. A supply depot would explode. A communication satellite would fail. An important official would die in what looked like an accident. Each event was small by itself, but together they formed a pattern of chaos that made the Council nervous. Mireille planted evidence that made the Kryn suspect the Domar of sabotage. Taiyang's virus began spreading on 3 Velith agricultural worlds. Una led raids that were blamed on pirates. GA trained strike teams that hit military targets and vanished like mist. The Council held emergency meetings. They accused each other of treachery. Old hatreds that had been buried for centuries began to surface. The perfect unity they had shown during the genocide started to crack, and in the darkness between the stars, the Scattered watched and waited and grew stronger. They had learned something important. Power was not just about ships and soldiers. Power was about belief. The Council believed they were safe. The Council believed humanity was dead. The Scattered would use those beliefs against them. Doyan stood at a window looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the ashes of Earth still drifted through space. He thought about his wife. He thought about his home. He thought about 8 billion voices that had been silenced. "We are coming," he whispered to the darkness. "We are slow. We are patient. But we are coming." 5 years after Earth died, the Galactic Council was falling apart from the inside. No one understood why. The Velith blamed the Kryn blamed the Domar blamed everyone. Strange accidents kept happening. Ships disappeared. Stations lost power. Important people died in ways that could not be explained. The Council held investigation after investigation, but they found nothing. They saw shadows everywhere, but could not catch them. High Arbiter Thiessen Vor had become paranoid. He changed his sleeping location every night. He had food tasters check every meal. He trusted no one, not even his own advisors. He had gained power by destroying humanity, but now that power felt fragile. Something was wrong with the galaxy, and he could not figure out what. The answer was simple. Humanity was not dead. Humanity was hunting. Park Doyon sat in the command center of a station hidden inside a frozen moon. He was 58 years old now. His body ached in ways it never had before. His joints hurt when the temperature dropped. His eyes needed help to read small text, but his mind was sharper than ever. 5 years of planning had taught him to think 10 moves ahead. The Scattered had grown beyond anything he had imagined. What started as a few hundred survivors was now a network of 15,000 humans spread across dozens of hidden locations. They had 300 ships. They had weapons and supplies and trained soldiers. They had allies among 12 species who hated the Council. Most importantly, they had information. Yun Marae had become the most dangerous person in the galaxy. No one knew her name. No one knew her face. But her spy network stretched into every corner of Council space. She had agents in government offices, military bases, and private homes. She knew secrets that could destroy careers. She knew weaknesses that could bring down empires. Marae was 43 now. The years of living in disguise had changed her. She could become anyone. She could shift her posture, her voice, her entire way of being until she was unrecognizable. She had lived as 17 different aliens over the past 5 years. She had made friends and lovers and enemies in each identity. And from each life, she had harvested information. The operation they called Whisper was her masterpiece. Choi Taeyang had perfected his virus. It attacked the breathing organs of the Velith. It spread slowly through their food and water. It caused damage so gradual that doctors could not find the cause. By the time symptoms appeared, the infected had already passed it to dozens of others. Marae delivered the virus through black market trade routes. Expensive foods, luxury drinks, the kind of things that rich and powerful Velith would buy without question. She watched as the plague took root on 3 agricultural worlds. She counted the deaths in her head like a prayer. 200,000 Velith died in the first year. The Council investigated but found no evidence of attack. They blamed natural causes. They blamed bad farming practices. They blamed each other. The trust between species continued to break. Operation Fracture came next. Marae had collected evidence of corruption among 17 Council officials. She released this evidence anonymously, all at once, through channels that could not be traced. The scandal consumed the Council for 8 months. 6 Kryn administrators were executed for embezzlement. The Kryn accused the Velith of framing them. Old hatred flared into new anger. Kung Juye had trained a generation of soldiers during these 5 years. She was 56 now, and her body was starting to slow down. But her tactical mind was brilliant. She designed operations that were like puzzles. Every piece fit perfectly. Every attack achieved its goal. And every attack was blamed on someone other than humanity. Her soldiers hit Domar supply convoys, leaving behind evidence that pointed to Kryn pirates. They sabotaged Velith military bases, making it look like inside jobs. They assassinated corrupt officials, letting the deaths appear as political murder. The Council saw enemies everywhere, but they never saw the truth. A new face had risen among the Scattered during these years. Baek Soo-jin was an engineer who had escaped Earth with nothing but the clothes on her back. She was 63 years old. She had lost her husband, her children, and her grandchildren in the bombardment. She had no family left. So she adopted the entire scattered as her family. Soo-jin was a genius with machines. She could look at alien technology and understand how it worked within hours. She took captured council equipment and made it better. She designed stealth systems that bent light and fooled sensors. She built weapons that exploited weaknesses in alien bodies. She created communication devices that were impossible to intercept. Under her guidance, the Scattered's technology leaped forward. Their ships became faster and harder to detect. Their weapons became more precise. Their defenses became stronger. Soo-jin worked 20-hour days, pouring her grief into creation. She said the work helped her forget. Doyeon suspected it helped her remember. Park Yuna had become a legend among the Scattered. She was 29 now, a veteran of dozens of raids and rescues. Her ship, the Long Memory, was the fastest in the fleet. She could outrun any council patrol. She could navigate asteroid fields at full speed. She could fight 3 ships at once and win. But more than her skills, people loved her spirit. Yuna never gave up. She never left anyone behind. She treated every survivor as family. When young soldiers were afraid, she sat with them and told them stories about Earth. When veterans wanted to give up, she reminded them why they fought. Father and daughter rarely served together anymore. Doyeon led the war from his hidden station. Yuna fought it among the stars. But they talked every week on secure channels. They shared news and plans and memories. They held each other's grief across the cold distance of space. How much longer? Yuna asked during one such call. How long do we wait? Doyeon considered the question. The council is weaker every day. Their species argue with each other. Their economy is struggling. Their military is spread thin, but they are still too strong for a direct attack. We need to wait until they are on the edge of breaking. Then we push. I am tired of waiting, Father. I know. So am I, but patience is our weapon. They think we are dead. Every day they believe that lie is another day we grow stronger. When we finally show ourselves, they will realize their mistake. And by then, it will be too late. Yuna was quiet for a moment. Then she spoke again. I dream about Earth sometimes. About the ocean outside our house. About Mother's garden. Do you think we will ever have those things again? Doyeon closed his eyes. He saw his wife's face. He saw sunlight on water. He saw a world that existed only in memory now. We will build new oceans, he said. We will plant new gardens. We will make a home that honors everything we lost. But first, we must finish what they started. First, we must show them what happens when you try to erase humanity. The call ended. Doyeon sat alone in his command center, surrounded by screens showing reports from across the galaxy. 5 years of secret war. 5 years of slow revenge. The council was crumbling, and they did not even know why. Soon, humanity would step out of the shadows. Soon, the galaxy would remember that the dead could rise. Doyeon smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of a man who had learned to wait for the perfect moment to strike. That moment was almost here. 10 years had passed since the genocide. 10 years of hiding. 10 years of planning. 10 years of slow, patient destruction. Now the waiting was over. The Galactic Council was barely holding together. The Domar had pulled out of 3 major trade agreements. The Kryn and Velith were fighting over resources. 12 minor species had demanded independence. The economy was collapsing. The military was confused. And Thiesenvor, the High Arbiter who had ordered humanity's death, had not slept peacefully in years. Park Do-yeon stood on the bridge of a new ship. They called it the Final Memory. It was humanity's first true warship built in secret over 7 years. It carried weapons from 12 different species, combined with human engineering into something new and terrible. Around it, 400 human vessels held formation. Behind them, 2,000 ships from allied species waited for orders. This was the largest fleet humanity had ever commanded. It was still smaller than the Council's forces. But size was not everything. Doyen was 63 years old. His hair was white. His face was lined with years of worry and war. But when he gave orders, his voice was steady. When he made decisions, his hands did not shake. He had been preparing for this moment since the day Earth burned. The anniversary of the genocide had been chosen deliberately. Every year, the Council held ceremonies to celebrate the stabilization of humanity. Every year, they congratulated themselves on their victory. This year, they would receive a different kind of celebration. The operation began at midnight, Galactic Standard Time. Across 47 star systems, human forces struck simultaneously. Kong Jie led the attack on the Velith shipyards at Korath Station. She was 61 now, too old for combat according to every doctor she had ever met. She ignored them all. She had lost 3 brothers on Earth. She would see this mission through personally. Her fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel directly inside the station's defensive perimeter. The Velith had never expected an attack here. Their shields were down. Their weapons were offline. Their commanders were asleep. The battle lasted for hours. Jihe's soldiers moved through the station like ghosts, neutralizing defenders and planting explosives. When they withdrew, the Velith had lost 60% of their military shipbuilding capacity. It would take them decades to recover. Yoon Murray did not lead soldiers. She led information. At the same moment, GA attacked the shipyards. Classified Council documents began appearing on public networks across the galaxy. Records of the genocide, complete with video evidence, proof of corruption and bribery. Secret experiments that had been conducted on subject species. Evidence of plans to eliminate other dangerous races. The documents were not released in human channels. They came through trusted news sources, academic databases, and government leaks. They looked like insider revelations, not enemy propaganda. Populations that had been loyal for centuries began asking questions. Protests erupted on 100 worlds. Riots followed. Park Yuna commanded the Long Memory in a holding action against a Council relief fleet. She was 34 now, her youth spent in the cold of space. She had her father's patience and her mother's fire. When the Council ships came, she met them with everything she had. The Long Memory was fast and agile. It danced between enemy formations, drawing fire away from slower Allied vessels. Yuna's crew worked like extensions of her mind. They anticipated her orders before she spoke them. They fought as one being with 100 hands. The battle was brutal. 3 human ships were destroyed. Dozens of crew members died. But Yuna held the line for 6 hours until reinforcements arrived. When the Council fleet finally retreated, they had lost 18 vessels to her 5. Choi Taeyong had a different mission. He led a team of scientists and engineers to a Velith research station where biological weapons were developed. The same weapons that had been considered for use on humanity before they chose bombardment instead. Taeyang was 40 now. The idealistic young scientist was gone. In his place was a man who understood that sometimes knowledge had to be destroyed. His team captured the station, downloaded all research data, and then triggered the self-destruct sequence. The explosion was visible from orbit. The Council scrambled to respond. Emergency communications flooded every channel. Admirals demanded reinforcements. Politicians demanded explanations. Thiessen Vor demanded that someone tell him what was happening. But the chaos was just beginning. Humanity's allies had been waiting for this signal. The Kashani rose up on 8 colonial worlds, overwhelming Council garrisons. The Thrum used their crystalline bodies to disrupt power systems on 3 major stations. The Moth people of Sala 7 carried explosives into buildings where they had been servants for centuries. 19. Council species defected within the first hours. They had been contacted months earlier by Murray's network. They had been promised justice, freedom, and a place in whatever came next. When the fighting started, they switched sides. The Council's unity shattered like glass. Thiessen Vor watched his empire collapse from his command center on Velith Prime. Screens showed battles on dozens of worlds. Reports came in faster than he could read them. Half his advisors were dead or missing. The other half were running for escape ships. A message arrived on all frequencies. It was broadcast in every language known to the galaxy. A human woman's voice spoke with cold clarity. You tried to erase us. You burned our world and hunted our children. You thought extinction would bring you peace. Instead, you created us. The survivors. The patient. The unforgiving. We are humanity, and we remember everything. The message was signed with coordinates. The coordinates of Velith Prime. Vor understood what was coming. He ordered his personal fleet to protect him. He called for every loyal ship to rally at the homeworld. He promised rewards, titles, territory to anyone who would stand with him. Some came. Many did not. The Council's power had been built on fear and mutual distrust. Now that fear was turning inward, Doyen watched the galaxy burn from the bridge of the final memory. His fleet was moving toward Velith Prime. Other fleets were converging from across the galaxy. Allies and enemies together. All racing toward the place where everything would be decided. Yuna's voice came through the communication system. Father, we are 3 hours behind you. We will be there for the final battle. I know you will, Doyen replied. I never doubted it. Are you ready? Doyen looked at the stars. Somewhere among them, the ashes of Earth still drifted through the void. Somewhere, his wife's grave had become part of the cosmic dust. He had carried this moment in his heart for 10 years. He had built toward it with every decision, every sacrifice, every sleepless night. I have been ready since the day they killed our world, he said. Now they will learn what that means. The fleet jumped to faster-than-light speed. The stars streaked into lines of light. And humanity went to war? The Battle of Velith Prime was not a battle. It was the end of an empire. Park Doyen stood on the bridge of the final memory as his fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel. Before him hung Velith Prime, the heart of the Galactic Council. The world where the decision to destroy humanity had been made. It was beautiful in a cold way. Silver cities covered its surface. Orbital stations circled it like metal moons. Ships filled the space around it like angry insects. Vor had gathered every loyal vessel. Nearly 6,000 warships formed a defensive wall around the planet. It was an impressive force. It should have been enough to destroy any attacker. But loyalty bought through fear does not survive pressure. Within the first hour of battle, 19 Council species changed sides. Their ships had been flying with the Council fleet. Now they turned their weapons on their former allies. Confusion spread through the Velith command structure. Officers could not tell who was an enemy and who was friend. Ships fired on each other by mistake. The defensive wall began to crumble. Doyen did not celebrate. He gave calm orders, moving his fleet through the gaps in the enemy formation. Human ships were smaller and faster than Council vessels. They darted between the larger craft, striking weak points and retreating before the enemy could respond. Kung Juye led the ground assault. Shuttles filled with her soldiers descended through the atmosphere of Velith Prime. Anti-aircraft fire destroyed some of them. The rest made it through. GA was on the first shuttle to land. She was 61 years old. Her knees hurt. Her back ached. She had promised herself she would retire after this. But first, she had work to do. Her soldiers moved through the capital city like wind through leaves. They had trained for years for this mission. They knew the layout of every building. They knew the location of every guard post. They knew exactly where Vor was hiding. The Velith defenders fought hard. They were not cowards. They believed in their empire, but belief could not stop bullets, and their communications had been jammed. Each unit fought alone, without coordination. Jihee's forces picked them apart piece by piece. In orbit, the battle was reaching its peak. Park Yuna arrived with her fleet, fresh from the fighting at the relief action. Her ships tore into the remaining Council forces from behind. Caught between two fleets, the defenders began to surrender. Not all of them. Some Velith captains chose death over defeat. They rammed their ships into human vessels or detonated their reactors. Each explosion killed friends, as well as enemies. But these acts of desperation could not change the outcome. The council was finished. Choi Taiyang worked through the battle, coordinating the capture of research stations and data centers. Every piece of information about humanity had to be secured. Every record of the genocide had to be preserved. History would remember what had happened here. Yoon Murray watched from a hidden location on the surface of Velith Prime. She had been living on this planet for 3 years under a false identity. She had attended parties with council officials. She had listened to them brag about wiping out humanity. Now, she watched them run for their lives. She felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not joy. Just a cold emptiness where her heart used to be. She had given too much of herself to this war. She was not sure what remained. Thiessen Vor was captured trying to escape in a private shuttle. Jihee's soldiers intercepted him before he could reach orbit. They brought him to her in restraints, his gray face twisted with fear and rage. "You are dead," he spat at her. "Your species is extinct. This changes nothing." Ga looked at him for a long moment. Then she smiled. "Take him to the surface. Let him see what nothing looks like." Doyen met the prisoner in the central plaza of the capital city. Around them, human soldiers secured buildings intended to wounded. Allied species helped with the work. Velith civilians watched from windows, afraid to come out. Thiessen Vor was forced to his knees before Doyen. The man who had ordered the death of 8 billion people looked up at the man who had survived. "You should have left us alone," Dojan said quietly. "We only wanted to trade, to explore, to exist. We were not your enemies. You were dangerous," Thiessen Vor replied. His voice was weak now. "Unpredictable. You would have dominated the galaxy eventually," perhaps Doyan admitted. "But you made it certain." The trial of Thiessen Vor lasted 3 months. It was broadcast across the galaxy. Every crime was documented. Every victim was named. 32 species sat on the tribunal, including the 4 who had voted against the genocide. They heard testimony from survivors, from witnesses, from the council's own records. The verdict was unanimous. Guilty of genocide. Guilty of crimes against sentient life. Guilty of conspiracy to destroy an intelligent species. The punishment was not death. Humanity had learned something from their own near extinction. Martyrs were dangerous. Dead enemies became symbols that lived forever. Instead, Thiessen Vor and the other council leaders were exiled to a barren moon at the edge of the galaxy. They were stripped of technology and left to survive with nothing but their hands. They would live out their days knowing that everything they had built was gone. The Galactic Council was dissolved. In its place, humanity proposed something new. They called it the Confederacy of Equals. No supreme species, no special privileges. Every member had voice and vote. Disputes would be resolved through talking, not killing. Many species were suspicious at first. They expected humanity to take revenge, to become new tyrants. But Doyen stood before the first assembly and spoke words that changed everything. "We did not survive to become what destroyed us," he said. "We survived to build something better. We offer our hand to every species willing to take it. The old way is dead. Let us create the new way together." Park Yuna became humanity's first ambassador to the Confederacy. She was 44, tired from decades of war, but her eyes still held hope. She negotiated treaties and resolved disputes. She worked to build trust between species that had been enemies for centuries. Beek Sujin shared her technology freely. She believed that progress should belong to everyone. Her inventions helped rebuild worlds that had been damaged by the war. She died at 91, surrounded by engineers from a dozen species who called her grandmother, Choi Taiyang, led efforts to rebuild the human population. Through ethical science and careful planning, he helped humanity grow again. It would take centuries to reach their former numbers, but they had time now. Yoon Mai-rae retired to a quiet moon. She wrote the history of the scattered, recording every name, every sacrifice, every act of courage. She titled her book What They Made Us. She died alone, but at peace. Kang Jie lived to 83. She spent her final years training the next generation of leaders, teaching them that strength came from unity, not fear. Her students spread across the galaxy, carrying her lessons with them. Park Doyon saw the new human homeworld take shape. They called the planet Memory. It orbited a warm yellow star. With oceans and mountains and skies that reminded survivors of Earth, gardens grew where only rock had been. Children played where soldiers had trained. Doyon died at 91. His great-grandchildren were with him at the end. Yuna held his hand as the monitor showed his heartbeat growing weak. "Did we do it, Father?" she asked. "Did we finish what we started?" Doyon smiled. His eyes were on the window, looking at the blue sky of memory. "We survived," he whispered, "and we remembered." He closed his eyes and did not open them again. 1,000 years later, the Confederacy of Equals still existed. It was not perfect. No government ever was. But it was stable, just, and free. Humanity had become one of its founding pillars, respected not for military power, but for their stubborn belief in hope. On the anniversary of Earth's destruction, now called Remembrance Day, silence fell across all Confederate space. It honored the 8 billion who had died, all species who had suffered under the old council. On Memory, children learned the old stories. They learned about the cargo captain who became a leader, about the strategist who built an army from nothing, about the spy who brought down empires, about the engineer grandmother who turned grief into genius, about the navigator who guided her people home, and in every classroom, every temple, every monument, the same words were carved into stone. They tried to erase us. They failed.